It's the first day. It's the first day of Rosh Chodesh Iyar. Rosh Chodesh Iyar, you transition from Nisan to Iyar. I'm learning a Maimed, which I'm going to teach this Friday for those who followed my modern that I teach on Fridays. So the Maimed that I'm going to teach this coming Friday, I try to learn the Shabbos before. Where the Rebbe talks about Nisan and Iyar, and he says, which is higher, Nisan or Iyar? Gives you 101 reasons why Nisan is higher than Iyar. It's the first month. It's Reish Rishon Lacham L'Chachi Hashana. Hashem takes us out of Mitzrayim. There's Giloim of Lifnei Atzimtzum. A bunch of stuff. So then the Rebbe says, but that's all what makes Nisan special over Iyar in terms of what the Eibishter gives us. But in terms of what we give the Eibishter, Iyar is more special than Nisan. And the Rebbe calls it in the lashon of this Maimer, and I'm not going to give you a class on a Maimer now, that Nisan is iskafia and Iyar is ishapcha. Nisan you have to control yourself, and Iyar you transform yourself. You become a new person. That's the avoid. That's still the same. It's a sweet word. It's a sweet word. Okay, be that as it may, we're going into Chodesh Iyar, and Chodesh Iyar has a number of interesting ideas. Number one, and this I never talk about. Iyar is called Chodesh Ziv, Zayin Yud Vav. It's a Possuk. Chodesh Ziv, Zayin Yud Vav, the month of Ziv. Why is it called Ziv? Shabei Neildu Ziv Sonei Elam, in which the Ziv Sonei, the rays of the world were born, which goes on Avraham Avinu, Yankov Avinu, this day in the Gemara, that were born on Chodesh Iyar. But Ziv means a ray of light, like Oyer V'Ziv, you have in Tanya, Oyer V'Ziv, Ha'or V'Ziv, a ray of light, Lichtigkeit. So Chodesh Iyar is a month which has to do with light. Okay, I'll take it, yeah? But then there's another thing. That Iyar, the Rosh Teves, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yankev, Rachel. Right? Aleph, Yud, Yud, Reish. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yankev, Rachel. And this goes on the Dal of the Ragla Merkava. Hashem has a chariot, Hashem has a chair that he sits on. And the chair in which he sits has legs. And there's 4 legs. Which is Chesed, Gevura, Teferes, Malchus. So we always say that the 4 legs are Avraham, Yitzchak, Yankev, David, but before it was David, it was Rachel. So the Iyar goes in the Merkava, the chair. Now what's the good thing about the chair and what's the bad thing about the chair? The good thing about the chair is if there's no chair, nobody sits. You talk about the Eibishter, V'ata Kodesh, Esher Tils Yisrael, Hashem has the opposite problem than we have, right? We need space. He has no need for it. So we have to invite him into the space. And we invite him into the space by creating for him a mishkan, a seat. You create him a mishkan, so then there's a shechina. If you create him a seat, he sits down. Chodesh is called the Merkava, it's the chair. If you put for the Eibishter a chair, he'll sit on the chair. And the chair is Aveis Ha'olam, Ziv Sonei Ha'olam Takeh. The chair is the Helik Zaydis, the Helik Ababis, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yankev, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. This is the Merkava, the chair. And when you have such a chair, the Eibishter sits. And the Eibishter sits, it's good for him, it's good for us, it's good for everybody. And lastly, Iyar is Rosh Teves, Ani Hashem Reifecha, right? You know this, right? Ani Hashem Reifecha. The Chodesh Iyar is connected to the Fuah. Just like in Pesach itself. You have 2, in those of us who live in Chutz La'aretz, you have 2 Sdorim. You have the first Seder and the second Seder. The first Seder, you eat a Kazayas Matzah, and that Kazayas Matzah called Michla Demhei Menusa, the bread of faith. And the Rebbe said many, many times, that when you eat matzah, it's not that matzah is a segula for emunah. You know, matzah is food and it has a segula, a oitza, a treasure, a secondary property that it gives you emunah. But the Rebbe said eating matzah is eating emunah. Matzah is emunah, not food that gives faith. It is faith. Eating matzah, the more matzah you eat, the more emunah you have. I mean, you have other problems, the more you have something else also. But matzah is emunah. Michal dem Heiminus. I always think about it. The misnagdische half enough and the chasidische half enough. It says on mine for Ebnish Pasein, befedish. V'lachei negim lechel matzah b'chol yem v'yem. It says on mine for the Rebbe Rashav, he's supposed to eat matzah every day. There's Yidden, most famously the Bishop the Masmid. He used to prepare 6 matzahs. And by the time he was done with those 6 matzahs, he ruined 100 pounds of matzahs along the way. They were virtually food. They were basically charcoal. So the shayla and alocha if you can make hamitzi on it. and he used them for the two Zdorim. And the whole Pesach he didn't eat matzah. He was Yaitze Seudah with the second cup of wine. He didn't eat matzah. And there are Yidden today was an Azay Fafrumt, or Azay Frum, that they wouldn't eat matzah. I mean, the Rebbe wasn't so frum. The Rebbe gets the matzah. But there are Yidden who are frumer than the Rebbe. Like, you know, the stories with the tzaddikim v'chulu, that they wouldn't eat matzah whole Pesach. So from a strict halacha nigla perspective, incredible. Yeah, they're so frum, they don't want to eat matzah, because the truth of the matter is there's much more of a shaila of chometz in your matzah than there is in your chicken soup. I mean, the most dangerous thing we have in our house on Pesach in terms of chometz is matzah. I mean, I'm going to make a protest against the matzah bakery. I don't know if I'm going to get anybody into trouble here, but I've never had a year the matzah bakery gave matzahs kfulas. So many folded matzahs. You're supposed to check the matzahs. Matzahs, when they have a fold, you have to break it off. When it has a bubble, you have to break it off. They didn't check the matzahs. You got matzahs, they were whole matzahs, but they were matzah. If there's a fold in the matzah, you're afraid that it didn't bake. You're supposed to break it off. You're not supposed to eat it. Whatever the case is, but matzah is the most dangerous place for chametz. There's no place in your house on Pesach where you should have a greater concern with chametz than in the matzah itself. So there's people who don't want to eat matzah. They say that you have no choice. You have to eat a kazayis matzah. It's a mitzvah, say deraisa. After that, you can drink wine. But that's the niglish of. But if you understand the pnimius hadover, that matzah is a munah. Matzah is a munah. Ifrum is one thing, a relationship with the Eibush is another. Every shtikel of matzah is nach a bisel emunah. That's what it says in the mind from the Rebbe Rashab and Isha Ches, that the minig is I eat matzah every day, meaning including Chalamayid and the Yom Tev matzah, essen matzah, because matzah is food of emunah. Matzah is mirchal, the mitzvah is food of faith. But anyway, I digress. This is beikir the first day Pesach. The second kazayah, second seder, is called mirchal das Wasser, which means refuah, healing, bread of healing. Matzah is refuah. Dr. Zelekson al Vashalom, the Rebbe used to give him matzah, and he would literally mix it into his medicines, into his injections. If the United States the Surgeon General knew what kind of medicine Dr. Zelekson was practicing, they would have taken his license from him. But they didn't know, and he would put matzah into his refuah, and many people were healed by the Rebbe's matzah. So the Rebbe's matzah. Dr. Zelekson was a Yid Tzaddik. He was a very unusual man. He was a Pashat Chassidish Yid. I tell this to you all the time because I can't get over it. When we were growing up, we wouldn't use Dr. Zelekson. Dr. Zelekson was over a bottle. We had to use a... I didn't know who Dr. Zelekson was. I knew who he was. But there was a guy in 770 with a bushy red beard, very quite unkempt, with the glass on the tip of his nose here today. And whenever the Rebbe davened for the Yomid, there was a big empty space in the front. Nobody stood there. There were two people. Chadakov and this guy with glasses like this. When I was a child growing up, the doors of 770 were not locked. People should know this. Until the middle 80s, every door, the only room in 770 that was locked was the Rebbe's own room. America's wasn't locked, you just walked in. We used to play outside the Rebbe's door in the Ganed Natach. And you'd walk in, this guy with the glasses was there. He stood outside the Rebbe's door. I can't talk it down. So in my head, he was a tzaddik nister. When I grew up, I found out that this was Dr. Zelekson. He davened jeden Tag, bariches. He would stand in Ganed Natach. I remember just as a child. In Ganed Natach, Shon. He was a very educated man. He was a worldly man. He went to college. He was a doctor. He really was a doctor. And at some point, he was a very good doctor. Und gedavent a ganzen Tag. This was Dr. Zelekson. The Rebbe once told him, you should know you're a doctor. And if anybody tells you you're not, it's very important you should know you're a doctor. You're a big doctor. Because I need you to be a doctor. When all the doctors say like this, and I say different, I need you to agree with me. He was the Rebbe's doctor. And he used to heal people with matzah. He knew medicine also and diet also, but he healed with people with matzah. But it's refuah. Healing. And refuah beruchnius is tshuva, you understand? Healing spiritually is tshuva. The idea of tshuva is the idea of refuah. So, the first Pesach Seder is emunah. The second Pesach Seder is refuah. But in a bigger scheme, that's the difference between Nisan and Iyar. Nisan is emunah and Iyar is refuah. That's why the Rosh Tevis of Iyar is Ani Hashem Roifecha. From the word refuah, Chaydesh Iyar is a Chaydesh of refuah. It's a Chaydesh that has to do with tshuva. For what? Right? A ger tzedek, a righteous convert, converts to the Jewish faith. The halacha is, and the Matthias says, the Torah establishes as a fact, kikotin shanei ladomi, right? A convert who converts is like a brand new baby. He has no sin, he has no prior existence, he has no prior life. So how can he do tshuva? Pesach, we were born as a nation. And each year in Pesach, we're born again as a nation. So if we're born every year in Pesach again as a nation, after Pesach, where's the need for tshuva and refuah? And the teretz is just like a ger tzedek. A righteous convert, when he converts to Judaism, is a new person. But the fact of the matter is that his former life he takes with him. So he's not healing for a sin he committed. He's healing for obstructions that he inherits. So however you want to spin it, you go out of Mitzrayim. You're born as a brand new person. You have no connection to any of your past. But Nebuch, you're schlepping it along. That has to be remedied. And that's the concept of Chedesh Iyar. Chedesh Iyar is a Chedesh of Refuah, of healing, of tshuva. Anyway, let's see if we can learn some Tanya. Okay, Rabbi Isai, if I can have your attention. Before I came here, I looked at the class I gave you before Pesach. I guess it was, Pesach was Sunday, so Yudalad was Shabbos. So it was Zayin Nissen. The last time we had a class here was Zayin Nissen, about 3 weeks ago, a little more than 3 weeks. I guess 3 weeks ago exactly. Today is Lamed Nissen. And so I looked at my class, it says I gave another introduction. So I gave 4 classes in chapter 20. Every class was another introduction. What was my last introduction about? My last introduction was about different levels of meditation. His bonanus. In general, there's 3 classes. There's Mamalik Kalam, there's Seviv Kalam, and there's what's called Atzmos, Kulach Mek Lochshev. You can think of Hashem as having a relationship with the world that's very close. You could think of Hashem of having a relationship with the world which is very far. And you think of Hashem that as far as He's concerned, the world doesn't exist at all. You understand? Those are 3 different meditations. It's a choice. You could be Mizboinin and Mamalik Kalamin, or Mamalik Kalamin. As the soul fills the body, God gives life to the world. If you think of Hashem as giving life to the world, first of all, there's a world, and then there's Hashem who fills it. It's a level. It's a low level, but it's a level. I exist, and I think about how Hashem takes care of me. When I think about how Hashem takes care of me, so I like Him. That's also a level, like we had in the Tanya a few days ago. It's dark, but I desire God. Why do I desire God? Not because He's true, but because He's my life. That's one level. The second level is you think about the infinity of God vis-a-vis the world. When you think about, it's called Seviv Kalama, when you think about the infinity of God vis-a-vis the world, it's not that there isn't a world, but the world is almost nothing. When you think about the world from the perspective of God Himself, like the famous lashon that I bring, it's not Keil ha'olam, it's Keil olam, not God of the world, God world. The world itself is Hashem. We're learning now Tanya chapter 20. Tanya chapter 20 is talking about Achdus Hashem, the unity of God. And this we talked about 2 introductions ago, so I'm not repeating those. And the way the Alter Rebbe presents Achdus Hashem, at least this is how I'm teaching it to you. Okay, there's other ways of learning it, but this is how I'm teaching it to you. The way the Alter Rebbe presents Achdus Hashem is he speaks about 2 levels. The second and the third of the 3 that I just mentioned. The lower Achdus Hashem that the Alter Rebbe is going to discuss is the insignificance of the world next to him. The higher Achdus Hashem that the Rebbe is going to discuss is the world from the perspective of Hashem Himself, which is not that the world is insignificant, the world is Him, or the world does not exist at all. So, to rephrase what I just said, we're in the middle of a conversation. We're in the middle of a shiur. It's going on now 4 weeks. What we're learning in these 4 weeks is the sugya of Achdus Hashem, or the lashon Possuk that the Alter Rebbe chooses here, Ani Havaya Lei Shanisi. That the Eibush says, Ani Havaya, I am God. Lei Shanisi, in creating the world, I have not changed at all. Before I created the world, there was nothing but me. Now that I created the world, there continues to be nothing but me. Ani Hashem, I am the Eibush. Lo shanisi, even though I made the world, there's no change in me. And he's going to present it in 2 steps. Step number 1 is that the world is almost nothing, insignificant. And step number 2, that the world is God. Now, if everybody is good, we're going to go to the text. Okay, I'm going to ask you to look inside. The level 1 is not mentioned here, just levels 2 and 3. Okay? So let's do this. Let's do this. I'm going to go all the way back to page 50. The line that begins with the word kula, which is only 6 lines into the Perek. Now understand that we learned this twice already. So I'm just segueing. I'm going to read this very quickly. I'm going to read and translate each word. I want to move on to the Alter Rebbe's point. The Alter Rebbe is going to argue Achdus Hashem, the unity of God, on the first of 2 levels. On the first of these 2 levels, we're not going to say the world doesn't exist at all. We're going to say the world virtually doesn't exist because of its insignificance next to him. So follow inside, please. And again, forgive me for reading the first 10 lines quickly. We already learned them twice. I'm just sort of segueing. To explain the idea of Achdus Hashem, it becomes necessary for me to mention first in brief inyan umuhus, the idea and the substance of Achdus Baruch Hu, the unity of God. And I explained this to you 3 introductions ago. The unity of God doesn't mean that there's one God and not 2 gods. That's not the unity of God. That's the unity of common sense. The unity of God means there's God and nothing else, not even us. That's the unity of God. It's called Ein Sun Einsik, one and only. And all of us believe Shehu is the only thing that exists. That just like prior to Hashem creating the world, Mamash, actually, he was the only thing that existed. Before creation, there was nothing but God. So you should understand, now that he made the world, nothing at all changed. Like it says in the Siddur, Atahu, you are he. Prior to have created the world. Atahu, you are he. Misha nivra chuluv. After the world was created. Peter says, Alter Rebbe, what this passage of Siddur means to say is who mamish, he literally, actually believes shum shina, without any change. Before creation there was only God, after creation there's only God. Yeah, but what about the world? The answer is, it's not really real. Kediksiv, and he brings the Possuk, Ani havaya le shanisi, I am God. And le shanisi, I have not changed. Now appreciate. When I gave you the class 3 weeks ago, and I told you that I have a list of meditations, if you'll send me an email, I'll send you my list. No one sent me no. Out of Pesach, women, they did me a favor, they showed up to class. They should remember after class to send me for a list of, I made a list of different meditations and sources for them. There are quite a few Psukim Alter Rebbe could have quoted. He could have quoted Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. He could have quoted Hashem hu alikim b'shamayim imav v'aretz b'tochas ein eid or ein oid movadei. He chooses this pasuk. There's a handful of psukim, maybe half a dozen psukim, that speak to the highest level of Achdus. The highest level of Achdus says there is God. Period. Conversation over. So he brings the pasuk Ani ad Hashem lo shanisi. Hashem says, I am God. Lo shanisi, I have not changed. Meaning, even though before there wasn't a world, and now there is a world, there really is no change at all. Key, and the reason is because Elam Hazeh, this world, V'chein kol Elam Esal Yenim, as well as the higher worlds, Einam Poyalim, do not affect Shum Shinui, any change whatsoever. Ba'achdusa Yizbarach, and the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Bihi Baram, as they are brought forward into a created state, Me'ayin, from a non-existential state, Leyesh, to an independently existential state. Hashem made a world. Before he made the world was Ephes. Before Hashem made the world was Ayin. After Hashem made the world is Yesh. So the Alter Rebbe says that's our perception and that's our experience. But the truth is, Just as he was all by his lonesome. Yachad Yuchad, one and only. Kedem he bara, before he made the world. Kainu, similarly, he is levade, all by his lonesome. Yachad Yuchad, one and only. Acha sheberam, after he created them. This is the cloud. This is the established assertion or asserted fact. Achdus Hashem says Hashem never changes. Before he made the world, it was only Hashem. After he made the world, it was only Hashem. Why? So again, he could have given us three different explanations. One is that the world is dependent upon him, right? But he chooses two. The second one and the third one. This is the middle madreg of his bonus. Read it inside. Mishum, because the kula kamei, everything next to him, killa chashiv, is like nothing worth. This is so yeshivish. Garnish wert in Yiddish. How do you say it in English? Nothing worth. It has no value, no significance. It's worth nothing. Notice again the chav. It's as if it were nothing and nothing. Now, for the mystics keeping score at home, and of course you're all big mystics, so you're all keeping score. The difference between the word ayin and the word efes is, we speak of creation as being speech, right? We speak of creation as being speech. What happened before Hashem spoke? Hashem thought. What happened before Hashem thought? Hashem was. The world before his thought is called Efes. The world after his thought is called Ayin. The world after his speech is called Yesh. You see? So he says, Ki Ayin ve'Efes. Before the Abich created it, it was as if it were nothing, meaning it was in a state of thought, and nothing. It didn't even exist on a level of thought. It was part of his unity. Mamish, actually. Ki, and what is the argument? His havos kol elam is the creation of all the worlds. El yenim, the higher worlds. V'tachteinim, the lower world. Me'ayin, from a non-existential state, leyesh, into an independently existential state. V'chayusam, and the life which is then invested within them. V'kiyumam, and the maintenance or the sustaining of their existence. Hamakaimam, which keeps them being. Shalayachsru, they should not revert back. Liyes ayin ve'efes kishahaya, to become nothing, and even more nothing, as it was prior to Hashem speaking and Hashem thinking. Okay? So there's a number of different components here, right? Hashem has to create the world in his thought. Hashem then has to separate the world from himself, which is called speech. And then Hashem has to keep that separated world from himself that's already been spoken in what's called his slapshus koyach apayel b'nifal, or דיבורו של הקדוש ברוך הוא. Hashem speaks twice. You know, we think, speak, and act. Hashem thinks, speaks, and speaks. There's no action by him. His speech is also an action. Or his action is also a speech. The two steps of speech is, number one, he removes himself so the world should exist. And number two, he invests himself that the world that exists should stay there. So this process of Hashem creating the world, listen to these words. Eine ela dvar Hashem v'ruach piv. It's only the words of Hashem and the air that comes along with those words, hamalubash behem, which is invested within them. So when a person speaks, right? So air comes out of their lungs, hits against their vocal cords, or what's called the heimetzas, the five sources of sound, and it emerges in amplified, audible sounds, right? Sounds that are joined together to create words, and so on and so forth. So there's two components to speech. There's the sounds themselves, and then there's the voice, which means the air that blows on the vocal cords to create amplification. I was a little boy, I was a scientist. I got older, became a batlin, yeah? We had a mechanism, a machine, which you may have never heard of. It's called a record player. Remember record players, may they rest in peace, or whatever it is, yeah? Now, if you have a record player, you can sell it for $1 million because it's an antique. If you remember record players came along with records. And of course, our middle name was Scratch, so that's another story. When you put on a record player, right, so you're supposed to push the button, and you're supposed to do this, and then this thing comes up, and it comes down, goes down, and but we had no patience, so you picked it and did it yourself, and you scratched the record, and the record didn't work, and you're angry at the record player, and you're angry at the record, don't ask. When you put on a record, it makes a music, yeah, it makes sound. But if you have a fancy system, you have separately the record player and separately the amplifier. That makes sound. So if you turn off the sound and you put on a record, you don't hear anything, right? But if you put your ear right next to the needle, you'll actually hear it. Now I know? I tried it. That's how I know. You want to know where all the records were scratched? Because you have crazy kids, at least one. Wait, what's the point? There's two things. There is the sound and there is the voice. In other words, the ability to hear it. In English, called to amplify. And in a person, this is air. The sounds come from the throat or from the mouth. The air comes from the lungs. And according to Hasidus, the power of the lungs comes from the heart. That's why we associate speech very, very much with emotion, with the hats, with the hevel halev, we don't call it. It's not called hevel hareya. In Torah, it's not called the air of the lungs, it's called the air of the heart, even though it comes from the lungs, but the heat, the warmth that allows that sound to come out comes from the heart. It's, in other words, sound has a guf and a neshama. And now you can go both ways. The sound is the guf, and the amplification is the neshama, or the amplification is the guf, and the sound is the neshama. You can look at it both ways. Is the air the body and the individual sounds the soul, or is the individual sounds the body and the ear the soul? This depends on what level in Kabbalah you're holding, you understand? But the bottom line is a combination. So when you speak words, your words have a neshama and a guf. When you speak words, your words have a soul and a body. When the Eibush Tekvayachal speaks words, since he uses the term speech because it's similar to our speech, so we should be able to understand his speech also has a soul and a body. The speech of Hashem has a body, which creates the body of this world, and it has a soul, which creates the soul of this world. And the Eibishter speaks, so that's what the meaning of these two terms is. Dvar Hashem, that means the words. The Ruach Piv, it means the air, the amplification. Hamalubash Bem, which is invested in them. So you have Hashem's speech has a soul and a body, and our world has a soul and a body, and the Eibishter creates the world through those words. So the Rebbe says you should know the whole investment of Hashem is words. What is the Alter Rebbe trying to say by saying that the whole investment of Hashem is words? That there's nothing deeper, there's nothing more. When you or I speak words, hopefully those words carry something deeper, like a feeling or an idea, or maybe something even spiritual which comes from the very essence of the person. The investment of Hashem in the creation is words, only words. Only words. You know, there's two sets of words. There's a meaningful set of words, we call them the Torah. And there's a meaningless set of words, or a relatively meaningless set of words, which is called Maisa Bereshis, the words of creation. The description in the Torah for Hashem created the world. So the Alter Rebbe says the Eibishter investment in the world is only words. Now, I guess I'll throw this in now. You have an against the Simon Hay, it's based on a Gemara. That the Gemara says that Hashem created the whole creation from two letters. In the Chumash, the creation account is 31 Psukim, which is not that much. It's one parsha, from Rishon till Sheni and Bereshis. But the Gemara says, based on a Possuk, that the Eibush created everything from two letters. Which two letters? Yud K. We say in Avalatzin, Ki B'ka Hashem Tzur Elam. So the Gemara says, with the two letters, Yud and Hey, Hashem created all of the worlds. B'Yud Nivre Elam Haba. With the letter Yud, Hashem created the higher worlds. Ubehei Nivre Elam Hazeh. And with the letter Hey, he created the lower worlds. How does the Alter Rebbe explain it? The Alter Rebbe goes into the fact that sound has a neshama and a guf. When you speak words, there's two parts. There's the fact that you spoke, and then there's the meaning of what you said. In a higher world, when Hashem speaks, the most important part of that speech is the yud, is the meaning of the words. In this world, when Hashem speaks, the most important thing is not the meaning of the word, but that he spoke. And that's how the Alter Rebbe explains the Gemara, Behei Nivre Elam Hazeh. The truth is, Gan Eden was created with Yud and Hey. And this world was also created with Yud and Hey. But in Gan Eden, the Yud is predominant. The meaning of the world is more important than the matter of the world. And in this world, it's the other way around. This world also has meaning, believe it or not. But its preeminent reality is that it exists, rather than what its substance is. So the Gemara says, Alter Rebbe brings it in Tanya, that Hashem created the world with two letters. So the Eibishter's investment in the entire creation is a word. And only a word. So does that mean there is no world? No, there is a world. But what kind of relativism, what kind of value does such a world have next to the Eibishter of the whole creation is only one word. See, that's the middle meditation. It's not the lowest meditation where Hashem is serving the world. It's not the highest meditation where there is only God. It's the middle meditation. Yeah, he created the world. but his investment is so peripheral, his investment is so limited, that it might as well be nothing. And that's what we're currently reading. Okay? So I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. I'm reading over a couple of lines one more time. Key. I went back 3 lines. The line that begins with the word Chashiv. Because this Havas Kala Elam is the creation of all the worlds, Al Yenim, the higher worlds, V'tachtenim, and the lower worlds. Me'ayin, from a non-existential state. L'yesh, to an independently existential state. V'chayusam, in their life. V'kiyumam, and their sustained existence. Hamakaimam, that they should continue to be. Shalayachseru lihiyez, they should not revert back into being. Ayin, nothing. V'efes, and nachamal garnished. Kishahaya, as it was before, Eine Ella is nothing other than words that come from his mouth, so to speak, proverbially, and the air which is amplifying those words, Hamalubash Behem, which is invested. The entire investment of Hashem in the creation is a word. I told this to you last time. I can't get away from this joke because I find it hysterical. Jackie Mason's Hamalichting Gan Eden talks about Jews and fighting. Yeah, you meet a Jew on a sidewalk, what's he worth? You put a Jew in the Israeli army, he's the best soldier in the world. So he has this whole shtick. I'm not a big maven of Jackie Mason, but this one is very funny. You meet a Jew on the street, you say, one more word. Yeah, everyone wants to know what that one more word is. You say, one more word, I'm going to break your head. Yeah, one more word. But no one ever figures out what that one more word is. They say that one more word, the Jew is actually going to get angry and is going to hit you. Jews are not violent people, except you put them in a uniform, then they become. Okay, I didn't come here to give you a chazara of Jackie Mason's lazanas. But in any case, there's one word. This word makes everything. But what is a word? Relative to what a person is, it's of no real relative value. And if by a person a word, one more word, there's only a word. By the Eibish that a word is of little value. So he continues. Let me explain it to you. In case you don't understand what I mean. And now remember, the Alter Rebbe here isn't saying the world doesn't exist. He's simply saying that the value of this world is a virtual nothingness because it's a word. In case you don't understand how little value a word is, he gives you an illustration. A person, for example, if a person speaks one word, all of us here are very mature and very responsible and very thoughtful and very deliberate, so we say a word that has great value. But not everybody's like us, you know what I'm saying? Some people who are a little less measured in, what are they called, verbal diarrhea, verbiage. It comes out of your mouth and after it flies out, you want to take it back, that word I shouldn't have gotten out, People speak, big deal, meret. So the Rebbe says, Dibur echad, one word that a person speaks, Shadibur zeh levade, this word, this solitary word, Klam mamish, it's actually like nothing. See, actually and like is a contradiction in terms, right? Actually means precisely. Like means approximately. But in this case, it's an actually like. If I could speak infinite words, and by the way, there's no reason to think that that's not true. There are Sifrei Musa that tell you this thing that they told you when you were a kid, that you could run out of words. You could talk so much you could run out of words. I don't think it's true. I certainly don't think it's true in Chassidus. Chassidus always talks about the infinity of the possibility of speech. There are Sifrei Musa that frighten you, and you can run out of words. You're not going to be able to speak. But Apitei, it's no such thing. You can't run out of words. You have infinite words. Infinite words. If you have infinite words and you invest one, you can't say it's nothing, but you can't say it's substantive. So it's kilam mamish. It's actually almost like nothing. If it's actually almost, when you have infinite possibility, one word is actually almost. You understand? It's finitude versus infinite. It's almost nothing. Afilu, even when juxtaposed against legabi klolus nafsham medaberes. When you juxtapose it against how many words you could speak. Hashem gave us an neshama called nefesh medaberes, a soul that speaks. Right? There are animals that speak. Right? Parrots speak, but parrots don't have a nefesh medaberes. They have a power of mimicry. They don't have a soul of speech. In other words, they don't have words. They have a tool that allows them to repeat the words you say. We, even those amongst us who are chas v'shalom, mute, have words. A person who's a mute can't find those words. A person who's a mute can't bring those words forward. But in his neshama he has words. And in his neshama, the number of words he has is infinite. But there's a specific neshama called the word soul. The neshama of דיבורו. We have a lot of layers to the neshama itself. One of the layers of the neshama, it's called this nefesh on the bed, is the soul of speech. That soul of speech has infinite possibility to speak words, or infinite words. One word juxtaposed against that soul is klam mamish. Is mamish like almost nothing. Shehi, and the soul of speech, the nefesh on the bed, is b'chush levush ha'amtzai shalah, is only the middle garment of the neshama. Shu keich hadibe shalah, which is one's power to speak. Hashem gave us three tools, three levushim. Hashem gave us three mediums through which we can communicate. Thought, which allows us to communicate with ourselves. Speech, which allows us to communicate with others like ourselves, other human beings. And action, which allows us to communicate with those less than us. So the Rebbe says one word is one against an infinity of the middle garment. It's not even the neshama, it's only the garment of the neshama. And we read on. Because the Rebbe says it very plain. There is no maximum words. A person can speak words ad infinitum. Now, we don't live forever. And because we don't live forever, you'll never be able to bring all of those words out. To speak infinite words, you have to live an actual infinity, not a theoretical infinity. You have to be here for infinite number of years already to have spoken infinite number of words. But in the neshama, there's no mania. There's no limit as far as the soul is concerned. You can keep talking and talking and talking. The kol shekei. And if one word is mamish like nothing, when compared to the soul of words, now think about it against the soul of thought. Now thought has a lot of definitions. But for the purposes of this conversation, let's say that the soul of thought is images, pictures. Right? A picture is worth 1,000 words. What's the difference between words and an image? Words, you have to have a bunch of separate words, like bricks. You lay one, you lay another, until you have a picture. Imagine being on a level, we have the whole picture right away. That's thought. So there's a lot of words, multiple images. There's a lot of different pictures. How many pictures could there be? An infinite number of pictures. But the distance between the spoken word and the thought word, let's say for the sake of this conversation, although it's more complicated than this, it's like the difference between the blocks that you build together to create a house and the house that's been completed from many, many bricks, that as it emerges as a singularity, as an achdus, as a unity. So the Rebbe says, Kol shekein legabe, when you compare my one word that I spoke, when I compare it to levush hapnimi shalosh, or the inner garment of the neshama, shehu hamachshav, which is the garment of thought, shemimenu nimshach hadiburim, from which the speech comes, v'hi chayusam, and it's the life of the speech, that if you could speak an infinite number of words, you have an infinite number of images, thoughts, which are the thoughts of those words, that in each one of those images you theoretically have an infinite number of words. So it's infinity times infinity in the negative. One word compared to how many words I could speak is one against infinity. One word against how much I could think is one against infinity times infinity. But then it continues. And it goes without saying, it need not be said, when you compare it to the substance and the etzem of the neshama. I'm going to translate the word atzmas correctly here rather than colloquially. Etzem means that the soul exists in relationship with itself. That's the meaning of the word etzem. Mohos, the substance. I'm not using the word etzem. I'm not using the word essence. Okay? Because essence doesn't have any meaning. Etzem means anything in its relation with itself. The neshama as it is by itself, with its substance, is so much more infinite than the soul of thoughts, which is infinite, and the soul of words, which is infinite. So what relativism is there one word against my neshama? It's one against infinity times infinity times infinity. So does it exist? Yeah, it does. What is it? It might as well not exist. It's completely insignificant. And he says, Shehein, that the neshama by itself is Esa B'chinasa. Now, the 10 faculties of the neshama, Chabad V'chulu, the mind and the heart and the senses, Shamehem Nimshechu, which is the source of Asiyas Machshavazu, the letters of this thought, which are we going to use the term pictures, images, which then comes down into my spoken word, which I speak one word at a time, when one speaks. So if before I speak, I think, what a miracle. And if before I think, I am. What is the relative worth of what I am to the one word that finally squeezes out of me after I go through all of these steps? You can't call it nothing, but it might as well be. Okay? Says the Rebbe, because thought, he gamken bechinas aces is also letters. Like speech, they're just finer and more edel. As opposed to the 10 faculties of the neshama, says the Rebbe, that the root and source of the thought and speech, there's no actual letters yet until one thinks. This piece that I just read, these couple of lines, is going to be B'li Neder, next Sunday's class. So what did we learn today? Achdus Hashem on the first of two levels, using a very simple mashal. And if I can be loyal to what I said the class I gave you 3 weeks ago and how I started today's class, in Chassidus there's basically is a very important word in this case, 3 tasks, 3 levels of meditations. The first level of meditation is I exist and God is my boss. The second level is God exists and next to him I'm nothing. And the third level is God exists, period. So the Alter Rebbe does not develop this idea on 3 levels. He develops it only on the second and the third level. So what we just read is, you want to understand the Achdus Hashem, think about one word. But think about that one word juxtaposed against the soul of words and the soul of thought and the soul of the soul itself. Questions or comments? It's the same idea, but there's a very big difference between the word of Hashem which creates the world and the word of Hashem of the Torah. Because the words of Hashem that create the world are, quote, only words. It's like a person speaks words that has nothing behind it, no emotion. Yeah? The words of Torah, they're also words, but they carry with them Hashem's wisdom and Hashem's emotion and Hashem's infinity. Okay? But let me just answer your question directly. The words of Hashem that create the world are like דיבורו. What is דיבורו? He separates himself and leaves them over. The words of Hashem that sustain the world is called דיבורו, the second step. Hashem creates the world. He creates space. And then he goes away and leaves the world over. That's called speech. But after he goes away and leaves the world over, he reinvests himself to keep it. That's called action. And that's קיום. That's a difference between Havaya and Chayis, creating the world, and קיום, and keeping it going. It's called התלבשות, koyach, הפועל, בנפעל. That Hashem invests his energy creation. Every second, it's like a second step in speech. You follow? Any other questions? Rabbi, questions or comments? You'll have to come back next time. Oh, the second versus the third, or the second versus the first? That the world exists, but next to him it's like nothing. Go ahead. You have a question or comment? But talk loud. I have to be able to hear you. Torah. Torah's higher. Yeah. I mean, have you ever tried to think about how God feels? That's what you're really asking, you know. So what's he busy with? What's he up to, you know? He doesn't have our problems. He's the inverse image of us. We need to have experiences. We need to have relationships. We need to make noise. We need to hear noise. We need to be stimulated and stimulate to identify with ourselves. And if we lose all that stimuli, we go mad. He doesn't need any of it. He's never bored when he's bored. You know what I'm saying? He's God. Now, think about it. It's not an easy thing to understand. But that's the truth. Boredom is his natural state, but he's not bored. Yeah, but how is he not bored if he's bored? Well, let me say it differently. How is not bored if his life is boring? His existence is not dependent. Ours is. We exist because of things other than ourselves. And if those things fail us, we go crazy. He exists because of himself only. He doesn't suffer from the problems of having something to say and no one to say it to. We do. For him, speech is as unnatural as for you and me to sit silently for the entire life. He's going out of himself. He's being different than his muhus hanetzem to speak. You understand? You have to try to reconfigure his point of view, and then it'll make sense. He doesn't have the problems of boredom that we have, which I think is the answer to your question. Okay, we're going to take a break.